This is it. The final week of Overwatch League qualifiers before a 3-week break. For many teams, their entire season could be on the line. For others, it's about finishing strong and looking towards the future. Going into this break on the right foot is absolutely crucial, and there's some big matchups ahead, so let's take a look at what we've got. And right off the bat, Friday in the West starts off kind of important. The Outlaws and Defiant doesn't seem like a great match, but the winner does benefit big time. The Outlaws need to win the rest of their games to ensure that they finish top 3 in the West and get that guaranteed playoff spot. And Toronto need to win this, or at the very least, kind of take a map or two to ensure that they don't fall behind in the play-in cutoff. Again though, the expectation just knowing the difference between the rosters isn't high. You'd expect Outlaws to win with relative ease, but it is important to see how Defiant play this, as they've looked pretty good since making their roster changes, and a decent showing against Houston would definitely instill some needed confidence that could possibly help them make a good push come playoff time, but in the end, Outlaws should probably win like 3-0. LA Gladiators versus NYXL. This is my Western key match of the week. Not so much because I'm necessarily expecting a really close game, but because it could play a critical role in deciding the play-in picture. Whoever wins first off is going to go up to 6 wins, and it's going to get a serious leg up over the other competition. And for Glads in particular, they just can't afford to lose. Their remaining schedule is super difficult, and they have to beat NYXL if they want any kind of chance. If they don't win this game, then their season is in serious jeopardy. The thing is, there may not be any saving them. They're terrible. Their lineup changes and lack of coordination and meta struggles have all piled up. And if the Glads can't even defeat the Valiant, it's difficult to have any faith in them to beat New York. NYXL have shown some decent gameplay in the summer, and they feel a lot more stable. They play better around their tank, the supports have better synergy, and they just have a better overall sense of direction. The Glads feel like a lifeless corpse being dragged to the finish, and this collab feels so bad that they'll probably lose this one as well, and I'll say in 4. I just don't know anymore, man. They just feel so lifeless. Anyway, onto Vegas versus Vancouver. In general, I'm kind of expecting Titans to take care of business. They've looked pretty good as of late, and a win here would basically seal their play-in spot, and quite possibly set them up to be one of the higher seeds. The Titans have a really solid DPS counterpart to Vegas, and the lower ping should give them a nice advantage. In my opinion, because Titans look pretty confident, they should end up 3-0ing, but you never really know for certain. Vegas are improving by the day, and they're desperate to not go winless, and I think that desperation along with the pressure on Vancouver not to lose to the winless team could make this closer than I think. Either way though, that DPS match is going to be fire, so definitely worth a watch. Out west on day 2, we start with the Gladiators taking on the Outlaws, and just knowing where they're going, plus the fact that they likely lose regardless of their situation, it's tough to imagine anything but a Houston blowout. And if they may not even stand a chance against NYXL, obviously they're not beating Outlaws, right? You'd expect Zhou and Violet to have huge days as they overpower the very confused and new-feeling Gladiators backline. A more functional team with way more superstars should make pretty quick work of the Glads. NYXL versus the Justice. Now things start to get interesting. The Justice are coming off a pretty rough week, but Donghoon is expected to be in America for the upcoming games, so the Justice could possibly be playing at maximum capacity. It's really important in terms of playing positioning for both sides, and is a good test to see where they currently stand. These two have been pretty decent rivals this year, and on paper feel rather even. Although NYXL, just based off of recent events, have looked better and are probably more favored, but honestly, that's kind of why I want to pick the Justice. They've looked worse, but they have the talent, and there has to be some kind of upset that happens this week, and this feels like a pretty good place. The Justice have been pretty scrappy all year, and they're just long overdue for a good performance just knowing what they've shown us this year. Donghoon's in America, Flora gets another chance against his old team, and people don't like how they've been playing as of late. It feels like the stars are lining up pretty perfectly here, so let's take a shot in the dark and say 3-2 for Washington. I'm fully expecting to be wrong because, again, New York feel like they're the better team right now, But these two have been pretty big rivals, so you never really know, especially because alphayi and Flora are definitely overdue for a big game. Vancouver versus San Francisco, another absolutely massive game, and it's for a couple reasons. One, it's really big for play-in positioning. Two, it's a mid-season madness knockouts rematch. And 3, this is Heesang's first time playing the Shock since getting released by them. A potential Heesang revenge game is definitely in the works. The man's been looking real good since joining the Titans, and you already know that he's been looking forward to this one. The Titans also want revenge as well, so these guys are coming to play. They want to win this one super badly, and in my opinion, I think they will. The story of Heesang's revenge story sounds very fitting for the scriptwriters, and the Shock themselves don't look all that hot, especially if you go off a couple of weeks ago. So while I'd assume this game comes down to a 50-50, I think the Titans probably have the edge because of their consistency. So I'll say that the Titans win this in a 3-2 for 2 specific reasons. 1, better Sombra consistency with Sugar Free. And 2, Vancouver support line are probably just going to have the bigger impact on the game. Renko and Luke Mino feel more like secondary people who are there for the ride trying to pocket their DPS and tanks, while Faith and Crimzo feel more like individuals who can really make a difference, and that in the end is what should give the Titans the advantage. And on Sunday out west, there's only 2 games to look forward to. First is Toronto versus Washington. Again, potentially a really important battle in the grand scheme of play-ins. When 2 teams are close to the same level like this, it becomes a coin toss. Who the hell wakes up on the right side of the bed? The DPS battle's tight, the tank situation's tight, and the Justice support line could now be playing at full potential, so even there could be pretty even. So now it's basically about the execution. And if it's about the execution, it's all about preparation. And in that instance, I favor Toronto. I'll say they win in a 3-1. Maybe it's a little stupid, but I think that a lot of prep is going into this Justice game because Houston's basically a lost cause. You know you're not going to beat them, but the Justice have to worry about 2 really important opponents that could very easily, permanently, mind you, take over in front of them in the standings and potentially knock them out altogether of the play-ins. And if the last few weeks have taught us anything, it's that the team with the tougher week tends to be the one that loses. This one is really hard to judge, but I'm kind of high on Defiant right now. They've looked pretty good, so why not go with my gut? And wrapping things up out west is the Shock versus Eternal. And I'ma say it right now. If the version of the Shock from a couple of weeks ago appears, this could get really scary. Vegas keeps showing a lot of life, and they have that kind of dog in them that could really get under the Shock skin. And I just can't shake the feeling that they really want to get back out there and improve after that tough Valiant loss last week. The last time Knife played a superstar DPS, he straight up outplayed Decay in a Tracer battle, and there's zero doubt that he could really catch Proper by surprise as well if he comes to play, and you'd expect him to with how good he's looked. And Vegas also, mind you, play a pretty similar style to the Valiant with Ramatra, which is something that did give the Shock some trouble. A close game truly might be in the cards this week. But in the end, I think that the Shock probably should persevere in a tight series. For one, they've had nearly 2 weeks to prepare for this, so maybe they'll have some kind of leg up there, but also, usually in these types of moments when the Shock have their backs against the wall against inferior teams, Angry Proper typically shows up. When his boys are losing to somebody that he knows they should be blowing out, this man goes full-on rage mode. He becomes an unstoppable force. Ain't no way this man is gonna sit there and risk having his playoff aspirations be in jeopardy because of a winless team. If it takes dragging his team kicking and screaming with him, then he'll find a way to get it done. It doesn't matter. Proper and the Shock prevail. On to the East. Their matches don't really mean as much right now, so I'll try and make this quicker. And the first thing I want to do is get a couple of contenders versus contenders matchups out of the way with one fell swoop, because honestly, they're just insignificant. First, you have Poker Face playing O2 Blast, as well as Panthera, and in my opinion, Poker Face will find a way to split this week. They're just so long overdue for a win, and in my opinion, it'll probably come against O2 Blast. O2 just has big holes that are very exploitable, and they're super inconsistent, and Poker Face could take advantage of that, but on the other hand, I think they'll come up short to Panthera. I said 3-2 just because these types of matches are really unpredictable, but Panthera are a way better dive team, and I just don't trust Valentine and Victoria that much, So yeah. You know what, while I'm at it, I'll throw in my thoughts on Dallas versus Panthera and O2 versus Shanghai because they're virtually the same. I'm expecting both OWL teams to win in blowout fashion. Panthera are kind of scrappy, but Dallas are just so good right now. Way too good in fact for them, so that'll be easy. And with Shanghai, O2, I just don't think they're very good. This meta does not suit them. They make a lot of mistakes, and the Dragons have a habit of playing well, at least in one of their games every week, so why not this one? Why not in the easier one? Now looking into the more significant Eastern matches, first is Charge versus Dynasty. The Charge honestly surprised me last week. They weren't fantastic, but I was impressed that they managed to take maps. That good old Chengdu synergy is definitely still out there. But honestly, they really haven't shown they can actually push a team to the brink yet, and you don't expect that to change after just 1 week. And against a Seoul team that are on the rise, I think they're probably out of luck. Prophet's Tracer might go very unchecked yet again, and considering how hot he's been lately, I'd actually count on it. Not to mention that Charge feel very limited in what they can play. They can basically only do the standard to a certain extent, and then resort to off-meta strats that really aren't worth it. And unless Dynasty are extremely unprepared, I think they'll be able to handle that. The other OWL match of Saturday is Infernal versus Dragons, and while I appreciate their scrappy nature and how comeback season is kind of on for them, I doubt that a game against Infernal will go super well for them. Infernal tend to play really well after a bad week, like we saw against Dallas, and they're also just really good with their short-term improvement. They're a way stronger team. They're a lot more flexible, they have better support and tank play, so they should get a nice, easy 3-0. Day 2 is where things start to get a bit more interesting. First is the Battle of Seoul and the Eastern match of the week. It's been a long time since their first matchup at the beginning of the year. A lot has changed. Infernal have gotten a lot better, and they were kind of always the better team, right? It's just that they were really nervous in front of a live audience. Now, I can't speak for certain for this upcoming game, but I'm assuming since Infernal recently got hit with COVID that there won't be a LAN battle this time. With no LAN nerf, plus generally being the better team, and desperately wanting revenge, the expectation should be that this time Infernal get the job done. However, I believe it'll be closer than people think. I'm going all in on a 5-map banger. City battles always seem to be super close, and the Dynasty have shown some steady improvement since the start of the summer. They've already punched up to the Spark, so why not Infernal too? They know these guys. They know they can beat them. Prophet's playing at a very high level. They might be the worst team, but confidence can do wonders. In the end, I think it will not matter and they'll fall short, but not without first making Infernal fans sweat. Unfortunately for Dynasty fans though, I think because their team has struggled so much against rush comms that it'll be their undoing against Infernal. Infernal are very flexible and very consistent, and Dynasty have been struggling against contenders teams, so Infernal all the way. Next is the other really big game out east, Dallas versus the Spark. I am genuinely very tempted to pick the Spark. The stars are lining up a little too perfectly. Spark are underdogs. They haven't looked too good. In Fuel, they've looked really good, but are technically overdue for a loss. It is super tempting. I mean, genuinely, I almost put it down on the pick'em, but sadly, I am too much of a chicken, and it's mostly because the Spark kind of feel like they're cruising right now. I don't know if they're just bored or if they're struggling since the departure of their coach Rui, but something feels off, and they've just been blowing maps to teams that you know they shouldn't. The Dragons, Dynasty, and Panthera matches have all not been very impressive, and Dallas just have way better consistency. You like their confidence a lot. This is a pretty good test for them, and I think they're going to pass with flying colors, as Sparks seem to be playing worse in the second half, and Dallas the last year or so have made a great habit of playing well in the second half and getting hot at the right time. And finally, to wrap up the other two games we haven't talked about, Dreamers play both Zhou teams, and genuinely, I think they actually have a shot against both of them. Dreamers have proven to be a good contenders team, and considering where the Charge are at, I think bare minimum they probably beat them. Guangzhou absolutely have zero answers to even counter a rush comp. I guess they could try the Pharah counters, but I'm pretty confident in Top Dragon to maybe counter swap over to an Echo if necessary, and even in Dive, Dreamers still might be the better team. They're probably the favorites in this series, but part of me thinks the Charge are going to push this to map 5 somehow because why not? That's the East in a nutshell. The Charge are bound to randomly give a scare at some point, and what better team to do so against than the one that knocked you out in the midseason knockouts? On the side of the Spark, if Dreamers can have their way on Rush, they really might have a chance. But depending on that alone doesn't make you feel super confident. You never know what the map pool is going to be, and the Spark are certainly better on the dive stuff, which is generally the preferred composition anyway out east, and I think that good Tracer play has also been the bane of their existence. They're playing against Leave, so this is a tough one, and I just don't see them coming out on top. But with Spark looking a little shaky lately, and Dreamers always being competitive, I'll give them a map. And that's week 4 in a nutshell. We're at the home stretch, guys. After this, there's going to be a long break until the end of August, where things are going to significantly change right as we enter the end of the regular season. This is a big week, and I'd love to hear who you think has a really big week down in the comments below. And if you enjoyed the video, hitting like and subscribe would be greatly appreciated. And until next time, this is ATP, signing out. Peace.